We cover all of the East Kent hospital sites and we cover the Down Valley hospital site. So we started in 2017. It was my role to kind of set up the project and work with different agencies, work with people across the hospital site, kind of embed the service so that everybody knew what it was, how they could approach people, to kind of deliver training about what they were looking for.
As a HIDVA, we've got specialist knowledge. We know about, some advice to do with housing, legal advice, options for victims, immediate safety planning. And so we can provide that support for that patient and that staff member about that initial immediacy sort of need. But then we can help with the longer term need as well, whether that is to referral to the local DA service.
Being here helps us to capture people that might get missed elsewhere. So we're looking out for the signs, or encouraging staff to look out for the signs of domestic abuse, getting them referred into our service so we can offer support to them at an earlier stage so that they haven't reached that crisis point.
We've been doing a lot of sort of work in order to raise awareness of our service through posters that are set up around the hospital in different wards, but equally we take a very proactive stance as well and sort of walking around the hospital in order to sort of see if there's anybody who's got any concerns raised. I'm part of the safeguarding team, which also helps because many of our referrals come via the safeguarding team.
You can encourage people, yes, ask about domestic abuse, but then they're thinking at the back of their minds, oh my goodness, if I ask, that's a can of worms, and how am I going to deal with that? So if they've got a HIDVA on site, they know all they've got to do is pick up the phone.
It's really handy having somebody that's got that full understanding of what's out there. It's got invaluable contacts with the refugees, with the charity that supports these women, with the programmes, and there's our sort of link in really with all those.
Having them on site has made the referrals a lot quicker. It's handy having them for our benefit as well, if we're unsure about something, to ring them and find out some information that we might need.
Because they're specialised in that and highly skilled, they're able to provide thorough and supportive assessments, and with A&E being a pressured environment, they're able to spend that time with the patient that I might not be able to do.
You can phone up and just have a chat through, or you've got concerns that have been raised with a patient, you want to discharge them, you're not sure, it sits uncomfortably, you want to make sure they're going to be followed up in the community.
I wouldn't know how to find a refuge, but knowing I can find someone who does know is excellent for me. Because I know I can't follow it up, we don't have the resources to follow up from here, but at least I know someone is safe when they're leaving the hospital, and there's a plan in place, and I've made people aware.
You can access them really quickly. If a midwife called me concerned and they were seeing a lady in antenatal clinic, I know that I can get hold of them and they can be up there and with the woman, within a few minutes.
The benefits are they bring a whole skill set to the hospital that we haven't got. The doctors and nurses focus on getting people better and making them well, but to have that extended knowledge about what support is out there for people, where safe spaces are, where refuges are, giving people additional knowledge and tools to help keep them safe.
We all feel comfortable talking to a medical professional, don't we? It's seen as that sanctuary where you can actually speak in confidence, and so many victims will speak to a medical professional, whether it's maternity, A&E, or just through a routine appointment.
Great opportunities to make that space to see somebody, so that could be taking someone for an x-ray where you can't take somebody else in with you. If people are in overnight, you can kind of talk to the ward staff and you can say, actually, a bit worried about this person, do you think you could ask them this question? Because I haven't been able to ask that today because the perpetrator has been here all day with them, but can you ask?
The difference for having a HIDVA placed in the hospital is that they can reach that person before it reaches crisis point. And a lot of the time, if that person, say, is to be discharged from hospital and that support isn't caught there or signposted there, they might go home back to an unsafe environment and not necessarily know support's there.
Ultimately, we are here to support staff who are having these disclosures made to them. We know that staff are absolutely rushed off their feet, and actually having the specialist service that we provide on site enables staff to focus on their roles, and we can then make sure that the patient gets the best support. but through training of staff, you know, we're able to raise their awareness and knowledge of how people can be helped and where to access support.
If somebody comes into A&E, the staff now have had a lot of training from the HIDVA services themselves, and the staff are made aware of who to contact, and they have their numbers and they can make direct contact with the HIDVAs.
They form part of our safeguarding training, so they give an hour session within that, which is held regularly. So their support is known about and getting known about within the trust.
She just made us aware of what services she tapped into, so it gave us a more holistic picture as to how we could utilise her and what to look out for more than anything. So it was very useful. I recommend it.
I think when you are speaking about the nature of domestic abuse and teaching and training medical staff around kind of potentially tactics that perpetrators might use, what abuse might look like, different forms of abuse that are not necessarily, you know, physical, beyond physical, the mental side of things. Sometimes that can be a trigger point for some people in recognising that potentially their experiences might have been abuse.
Since I've been working here, I've noticed that we've had to make a number of referrals where staff themselves have been subject to abuse, actually both male and female. I think staff are concerned about what impact it may have on their job or how they're perceived, so they're reluctant to share much information with ourselves as we are seen as part of the establishment, but they're often happily will engage with independent advisors.
People experiencing domestic abuse are isolated, so they're very unlikely to go to the other venues that we would come across. It's also, we've come across a lot of older people, and again, there won't be things like, there won't be children's social services involved, so those people are off the radar. So these people, when they come into hospital, they're on the radar.
They're active across the whole hospital, so the maternity department uses the HIDVAs a lot, children's safeguarding do as well, but also on the wards we're finding a lot more elderly couples are living in unhealthy relationships, and I don't think it's until somebody comes into hospital and they've been here a little while and they feel quite safe that they let their guard down and are able to say what they need to say.
I had a gentleman that loved his wife dearly, but she kept hitting him over the head with a walking stick. So his admission was severe wounds to the head. She actually knocked him unconscious. Those sort of things, you know, I would use the domestic violence people for.
I think one of the main things to come out of when I was hospital IDVA was the kind of the cemented rapport that you have with different departments amongst the hospital. So the neonatal intensive care unit, they welcomed us into their safeguarding meetings, and we was able to kind of check our systems to see whether or not that person was known on our systems, and if they were, we could potentially have an insight as to what their relationship's like.
At the very first booking appointment with the midwife, we have what we call a social background questionnaire, and that's to identify all social risks. So that could be a learning disability, a problem with mental health, but we do specifically ask about domestic abuse and now coercion and control as well. Our hospital IDVAs are really good at discreetly bumping into women, so they might be waiting when we know they're coming in for a scan or an appointment. Obviously we're not going to force it on them, but it is a way of arranging it without perpetrators of domestic abuse being aware.
During the kind of children's safeguarding meetings, we would have a lot of kind of teens and adolescents that might have presented with mental health issues, and it's just about kind of asking those right questions within the safeguarding meeting. You know, has this conversation been had? Do we know what this looks like at home? What's the dynamics?
We don't always hear about the children, so when she picks up a case that's been referred to her because there's been an assault, there's concerns of abuse, and she'll discover their children, and she will then link that in with us. So, you know, we're very dependent on being told about things.
It might be that somebody, when they come into the hospital, they might present with a physical injury which they explain away, But actually when they're on the site, when they're on a different ward, they feel really quite safe, and that's when they begin to disclose.
I think it's quite critical getting them at the point when that incident has occurred and they realise the risk to themselves, and they've got people reinforcing that this is wrong and that this isn't acceptable.
I have done a piece of work actually with a patient, and she disclosed to me it was our only chance, safe chance, to disclose the abuse. And actually, the first time we spoke to her, she was very cautious. She was scared that actually, you know, to trust her with her safety, and you know, we might put her at more risk. But we worked it at her own speed. So she said, had she not have been in hospital and had we not have been engaging with her, she would have just been released back home, and the abuse would have been continued and carried on.
No disrespect to our A&E staff, they're so incredibly busy and they need to either get that person to a place where they can be discharged or admitted to hospital, to have somebody there to support them, to ask those questions that may take a little bit longer than patching somebody up, and knowing the right questions to ask and watching how the IDVA works and asks those questions is really, really important.
I think it's providing that reassurance that health has listened to somebody coming in, has believed what's happened to them, and are then offering them an avenue of support and a way out if they want that, or if at the point that they want that.
We run things past each other quite often and say that, you know, this may not come under the generic heading of domestic abuse, but I'm quite worried about this person and there may be something else going on. Would you mind having a chat? So we have quite a good relationship and it works really well.
We're independent, we're not part of a statutory agency. You know, this is about your choices and what you want to do, you know, what you're ready to do, rather than having that, you know, sort of quite scary institutional body and information being shared.
I think really what works well is that their expertise, they're able to infuse that into our team, because it's really more specialist than what our team can offer.
There needs to be increased awareness amongst medical professionals about domestic abuse and about the impact of domestic abuse on physical and mental health. Because actually, unless we start to address the root cause of some of these reasons why people come into hospital and why they're experiencing these problems, then the cycle isn't broken.
Any communication between us is healthy and is good for the service. It's good for the patients, it's good for East Kent hospitals, and it's good for liaison psychiatry.
Everybody breathes a sigh of relief that there's somebody that knows what they're doing, knows the questions to ask, knows where all the support mechanisms are and who to refer on to.
To know that as a point of contact or a telephone number, or someone's there to say, yes, I'll give you a hand, or just have a conversation with the phone. Yes, abuse, we can pick it up in the Monday, just let the person stay there.
They're amazing and they do an amazing job, and yeah, we're better having them around.
I think it's just been such a help. We're just getting busier and busier, and it's perhaps enhanced the care we can give patients.
They take the pressure off us, so we can then carry on with what we're doing. Otherwise, the risk is it's going to be ignored.
So a HIDVA to me is a bit of a lifesaver, to be honest. They're a really important person within the Trust, and I think the Trust has really welcomed their energy, their support and their knowledge and skills.